Did they win?
They're up at halftime.
Oh, it's halftime?
All right, there we go. Welcome back into the SoonerScoop.com studios. Eddie Rodosevich, George Stoya, Josh McQuestion. A monumental day for Oklahoma. And I say monumental. I don't know if that's being a little bit dramatic, but this is a big win.
It's pretty big.
We'll get into why that is the case. It's been a really busy day around here at the SoonerScoop.com offices, studios, obviously a bunch of construction going on. Really good family business with Walter Rouse that I'm excited for a lot of people to watch with Isaac and Joe today. But obviously the big news, Oklahoma has landed TCU defensive tackle Dominic Williams. That news coming out here within the last hour. And I feel like, George, this is news that we've been waiting on for basically the entirety of the day. We'll get into everything kind of went on behind the scenes. But I know that you've done a really good job with this story from start to finish. This was a guy that Oklahoma identified early in the process. It was somebody that, I think that they obviously spent a lot of time recruiting here over the last couple of weeks, and you've been doing a lot of updates, putting that up on the message boards today, and it's a good reason to join SoonerScoop.com. But right now we have a really good promo for you out there, the YouTube viewer. $1 for 2 months for SoonerScoop.com, and you would have been up to date with the latest on what was happening with Dominic Williams. I'm going to continue to do that and say Damonic. I think that'd be pretty badass. Yeah. But special offer, $1, 2 months, promo code OU1. Promo code OU1 for 2 months at SoonerScoop.com. And there's plenty to get into here. Not just with the football side of things, but Bob's covering softball, big softball weekend. You can watch the stickball reports right here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube page, as well as a little bit of a preview for OU baseball's trip down to Lubbock this weekend. And, obviously, as we work into the summer months, and there's going to maybe be some other portal guys that Oklahoma was interested in here moving forward on the offensive line. But the story of the night, Dominic Williams has made the announcement. I feel like, George, you've aged over the last couple of days here. Yeah. As I think that everything kind of got close, because obviously if we want to backtrack, let's backtrack all the way back to when he visited for the spring game. And we talked about, and you had wrote about how good that visit was. And then he, him and his team, Cardell, they wanted to go on these other visits. And you never know, because the transfer portal is such an interesting time period right now with, if you let the guy off the campus early, how's that going to end up for you? But long story short, Oklahoma has landed Dominic Williams. Just from today, it seems like it was a fight. They got into a little bit of a fight for Dominic Williams. How would you characterize that going down today?
Boy, where to start? I think
it's been a day.
Yeah, it's really been a couple weeks, and this even goes back, Eddie. I know you said the visit back at the spring game, but this was somebody that Oklahoma's been familiar with for months, I would say. I mean, there was some talk about Dominic Williams going into the portal back in January in the first portal window, and Oklahoma was certainly on the radar then. And so when he jumped in this spring, Oklahoma was all over it. I think Oklahoma already had somewhat of a connection. You had, Seth Luttrell was actually very close family friends with some people in Williams' circle. That's actually what led to them getting the first visit on campus. And from what I understand, when he visited, there was a chance he was going to commit that weekend. But the plan all along was to go on the other visits. Texas was the next one, then Missouri, then LSU, and then make a decision. And from what I understand is OU was always the team to beat. You look at that first visit, they made a real connection with his mom.
Right.
And it's been pretty noted. I've said it and I'll say it again. Mom wanted OU.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
She was pretty outspoken about that,
yes,
correct?
She loved OU. She connected with the coaches' wives. It was something that was made apparent from the start. And I think even Dominic really loved OU. But in today's world of the transfer portal, you go on all the visits because all of a sudden your price might go up. And so when you make a visit to Texas, who has a lot of money, Missouri, who we know is a big player in the NIL game, LSU is obviously very desperate for defensive tackles. You knew that price was going to go up, and maybe you use that as leverage.
Sure.
I think that's certainly something you could say. But from what I understand, I know there was reports out there that was like after the Texas visit, there's even people saying before he got to Texas, oh, he's going to commit to Texas, OU's out of it. That was never the case. OU was always squarely in this. Was it maybe really tight at times? Definitely. I think Texas made a real shot. I think LSU had a strong connection. But at the end of the day, Eddie, this was an OU-Texas battle, and it went all the way up till about 8 p.m. tonight. I think that there was some negotiating back and forth. I think Texas made a very, very good offer that OU originally maybe didn't match, and then OU had to come back and either match or exceed that to land Dominic Williams. So I think, and we're going to get into all of this in terms of what this means perception-wise, the narrative around Oklahoma in terms of using NIL and actually spending it and all the money that plays into that. But the big thing here is OU was able to land a really good player in Dominic Williams, but I think it also kind of puts everyone else on notice of, hey, Oklahoma's not messing around. When they want to go land a big-time player, they're willing to go do it.
I want to get into all the NIL stuff, but just on the surface, Josh, we had talked about it seems like for weeks now, the spring portal was going to be massive for Oklahoma. They were going to be looking for 2 interior defensive linemen. You get Jermaine Loley?
Yeah, something like that.
Carrie's going to
Loley.
Loley. Damn it.
Loley.
Jermaine Loley from Louisville. You get him to jump in after that first weekend.
Yeah.
And then obviously you add Dom Williams today. Josh, just in terms of the type of player, I think everybody has familiarized themselves with what he was able to do at Fort Worth for TCU. 27 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks as a freshman, 33 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks this past season as a sophomore. Truly a difference maker and somebody that Oklahoma obviously needed and wanted really, really badly.
Yeah, guys, I mean, this is, we've talked about it for the last 2 days when it started, because, I mean, fans, I know we've gotten a lot of well, you guys, how long have you been sitting on it? How long have you known? Guys, I mean, I think we can all acknowledge, we had a pretty good feeling for a few days here, but there was never a certainty to any of it. So, when you but today I kind of sat down, I started to go over and start watching the tape a little bit. And I went over about 5 of his games. I went through Pro Football Focus, kind of found his top 5 performances, just trying to get a good, look at what he can be. What is he at his best? And I would say 2 things really stood out. As a sophomore in 2023, that TCU started to move him around more and more. You started seeing him do more of the stuff that I would kind of expect OU to do with him, where he's playing some 4-eye. He wasn't just playing that head-up nose over the center, so they moved him around a little bit. In the game that I saw it most notably was his most statistically relevant game, Texas Tech this year in Lubbock, where he had 7 tackles, had a half a tackle for loss. He was very active. And, I think if people go back and watch that game, and we've got a story up on the front page kind of highlighting all these games I'm talking about, you can, and I linked to a couple of plays that are interesting, stuff you can kind of get a feel for what he is. But this is a guy that, again, he is an interior guy. I mean, he's best playing somewhere from A-gap to A-gap. I mean, if he wants to shade on the, on the side of the center, okay, that's fine. He could play head up over a guard. But he is a very powerful guy. When he plays with good pad level, he is nearly impossible to move off the spot. I watched him. His best game last year was the Kansas State Big 12 championship game, and he was dominant at times. There were some times he went head up with Cooper Beebe, and you have to remember at this point in time in 2022, he is a true freshman playing at the end of his year, and we all know freshmen, as the year goes on, they tend to wear down a little bit. Playing against Cooper Beebe, one of the best offensive linemen, not just in the Big 12, but in the country.
Sure.
And he gave Cooper Beebe some problems. So, again, I don't want to, we can get into what this all means and that kind of thing, but there's no question. This is a guy who makes Oklahoma's defense better immediately.
When you're talking about a starting rotation or a depth in terms of what Oklahoma now has on the interior, with both of the guys that they added. I mean, they filled both of the needs very, very well. And that kind of leads into the next, I guess, kind of topic in terms of Todd Bates. I mean, we're not too far removed, Josh, from a bunch of idiots out there basically trying to run Todd Bates out of town after the first year. And all of a sudden now you look up, he signed probably, as been well documented, maybe one of the best defensive line classes brought into Oklahoma in maybe the last 2 decades, as well as what they've been able to do in the portal. It seems like he's starting to find his footing a little bit recruiting at Oklahoma.
He's been nails. I mean, he's been everything that we, had heard. He's been as advertised. And look, he just also got Jonah Loalu drafted this past weekend, which was somebody that if you told me a couple years ago that he was going to get drafted, I don't know if I would have believed you. So he's on a hot streak right now. And I think that when you talk about that defense, we've talked about it so much this offseason, like, man, they've got every part, but man, they're just missing a couple guys.
I think we've sat here on practice reports saying if they just had Jacob Lacey back.
Right. And they just landed the top guy in the transfer portal in terms of defensive lineman. At least a lot of people consider him the top guy. And I think that, man, they just went for maybe a top 25 defense potential to be a top 10, top 15 defense next year. And that's because of what Todd Bates has been able to do. We've talked about it at every level. We've seen it at linebacker. We've seen it cornerback, safety, and now finally you're seeing it defensive line. Not only the freshmen that came in that we've talked a lot about, Jaden Jackson, David Stone, but to be able to go out and get these guys in the portal. Also even, don't forget that he was able to get DJ Terry and Jacob Lacey, who won't be able to play next year, but both those guys to come back.
Sure.
I mean, I think that Todd Bates has done a tremendous job.
Josh, is that crazy to you when you're talking about projecting what Oklahoma could be? Obviously, injuries, games, it's all going to play into it. But is that crazy on the surface to say that getting somebody like a Dom Williams, adding Jermaine, say it,
Lole
in, I'll get it at some point. He's going to probably have to make a couple sacks for me to really
maybe we'll get him on the
understand
show.
It. But well, he's a lot bigger than me, too, so that'd be very intimidating if I don't say his name correctly.
Boy.
It's only 4 characters. You would think I'd be able to get that. Yeah. But is it crazy to think that they can make that type of jump, and especially when you look at the guys that they're bringing back now that they have an interior defensive line in place?
What's crazy is, first of all, no, I don't think that's nuts. But what is crazy is that this was the question. Like, defensive tackle, can this group be good enough? Are they going to be where they need to be? And now, in a matter of a couple of weeks, I'm just like, all they need is R. Mason Thomas to stay healthy and one other pass rusher to emerge. Like, if it's PJ or whoever it is, everything else is in place for this defense to be as good as any group we've seen at Oklahoma since 2009. That Gerald McCoy, Quentin Carter, Jeremy Beal group that was so outstanding and really carried OU through kind of a tough year that year. But this is what everybody was promised when Brent Venables came back. The offense has been great, but they can't stop anybody. This defense should be exactly what you're talking about. And you've got it at every level. You've got Dominic Williams. You've got, again, R. Mason Thomas has all the potential in the world to be a difference maker for Oklahoma. The second level, Danny Stutzman and Kip Lewis, Billy Bowman, Gentry Williams. Like, these are not just, these are good, experienced college guys. These are NFL guys. Like, these are guys that have a chance to go play NFL football, and in some cases are going to be, first, second day draft kind of guys. So it's huge for Oklahoma. And I mean, I know we'll talk about the perception and what this means, but guys, for me, the only day I can remember that felt close to this, as far as like, what does it mean going forward, was probably David Stone. Same kind of deal. Like, it's Oklahoma just kept pushing that rock up the hill over and over and over again. And and OU fans just would get their hearts broken every single time. And then they got that win with David Stone. And then, Nigel Smith came along, and they just kind of kept building that momentum. And now with Dominic Williams, like, next year when OU is going through the portal, I don't think the OU fans, and let's be honest, look at the Hayes Fawcett tweet, the Texas and Missouri fans are going to be able to sit there and be like, well, OU will fold when it comes time to it. OU competed, guys. We know this was heated on a lot of different fronts, and Oklahoma did what they had to do to get the job done.
Let's pull back the curtain a little bit in terms of everything that went down today. Todd Bates obviously played a big role, made the in-home visit this morning in Dallas.
Yep.
There's another coach, though, that spent a lot of time on this, particularly today on the phones, is what you've reported, George. Brent Venables, this was a guy that he identified early, and this is a guy that he was not basically going to quit until they got him.
Brent Venables was all in on Dominic Williams. He was, from what I was told from talking to a few people, was he was going to do whatever it took. And I think that the people running OU's NIL and everything that goes into that knew that. And
Sure.
they were like ready. They were ready to pony up for Dominic Williams. And I think that there was a point today where Dominic Williams was ready to commit to Oklahoma, but I think that maybe there needed to be some more negotiations, and that's what delayed this so long, because from what I had heard in the morning was, Todd Bates was meeting with him at 10 a.m. and a decision would come sometime early afternoon. And that decision just never came, and you thought, okay, the longer this goes, there's even talks of this is going to go into tomorrow. And if that were to happen, if this were to
That's when
be
we
pushed,
started. I think when those rumors started to kind of emerge, the feeling in this office went down a little bit, just in terms of not only are we not going to be able to have the story tonight, but this also means maybe this isn't going to be Oklahoma in the end.
And I think that, for me, at least pulling back the curtain a little bit, I kept hearing, hey, OU's the team to beat.
Sure.
OU is the team that Dominic likes. It's what his mom likes.
I mean, there were people that were reporting he was going to commit to Texas just last week, right?
Right. And even Cordell Landers, who I know is now in Sooner lore forever, Mr. Landers, who I spoke a lot to, his handler and agent. But, they all loved OU. And so everything kept pointing. But I think that for me, as a reporter, seeing that the way things have gone, recently and previously in some of these recruitments, you're skeptical. You're like, okay, is this really happening? I don't know these people. Do I really believe them? And I hadn't really talked a lot to Dominic, because it was like, what does Dominic really want? And, when you start to hear some of these things about the negotiations and, hey, they're going to have to pay a little bit more than maybe what the original price was when he came in a couple weeks ago, all of those things, you're like, man, is OU actually going to do this? And I think that for them to do that, I think that's actually the biggest story in all of this. Dominic Williams is a great player. He's going to play for Oklahoma next year and help them tremendously. But I think in terms of perception, that's the biggest win for Oklahoma, showing, hey, we are willing to do whatever it takes. And maybe they do pay a little bit extra. And I saw some Texas fans saying, well, they overpaid for him. It's like, well, that's what you have to do in today's NIL and transfer portal and college football. Sometimes you might have to overpay.
Particularly at a position of need like the interior was.
Exactly. And I think it also shows, hey, they might have overpaid, but OU's got the money to overpay, and not every school does. I know for a fact LSU has been struggling with NIL.
One of the big surprises out of this whole entire saga, or whatever you want to call it, that I don't know. I figured that their NIL would be better equipped.
I think LSU and Missouri both kind of fell into that boat of it became a pretty strong bidding war between OU and Texas, and I don't know if either of those two schools were able to keep up.
I want to talk about the perception stuff, because that I think is kind of the underlying biggest story out there in terms of what Oklahoma was able to accomplish. Real quick, there was some USC stuff today. You think that's true?
I think that maybe there was some contact there, but USC was never really in play. That was not somewhere that Dominic wanted to go. I know he's from Torrance, California, which is right outside of Los Angeles, but that was, I think he wanted to play in the SEC. And like I said, Oklahoma has kind of had a connection with him for a while, so they had an upper hand. I think LSU, Bo Davis, the defensive line coach there, who was previously at Texas, also had a very strong connection, which made me think that LSU was very much in it until they just, honestly, I don't think they had the money. And then obviously Texas is in it because they're one of they might have the most NIL money out there of a lot of schools.
Right.
And so it's tough to compete with them at any point. But yeah, I don't think USC was ever a real player.
Some interesting bedfellows in the recruitment of Dominic Williams when you talk about Texas, Missouri, LSU, and Oklahoma. Obviously,
these are big players,
all in the Southeastern Conference where Oklahoma's headed.
They all have landed big defensive tackles in the portal. Recently. I mean, so to win this battle in this group of schools, this isn't a situation where I don't want to say Branson Hickman wasn't a big win. It was a big win, but they beat out TCU and Arkansas. This is not the same situation. This was a situation where we got chicken tenders in the chat. Awesome.
You got money for chicken tenders in the chat. You can
Nice.
either spend it on a six chicken fingers, or you can go buy a Lucy on the way home.
Well, I'll
Thank
spin
you,
it
Andy Van
on
Can.
I'll spin it on my girlfriend, who I think is watching right now. She's giving me
Oh,
live updates.
hello, how are we?
In criticisms, but
Hi. We
but
can't wait to
What are
meet
the
you. We're
criticisms?
so excited.
What are the criticisms?
well, I don't think she's actually being critical, but she's
Do I look
just
cute?
supportive. Yeah, but my point was that OU is playing the game. And I think that's the big takeaway from this. Obviously, Dominic Williams is huge. Getting him is great, but the big takeaway tonight is they're playing the game and they're in it for real.
Josh, you mentioned David Stone and how important that was just from a perception standpoint. I don't want to compare and contrast because I don't know if the two situations are they're similar, but they're different in a way. One kid coming out of high school, obviously, Dominic coming in and, obviously stepping into a role after 2 years at TCU. But when we talk about perception, why was this so big for the viewers out there that they needed to go get somebody, and not only get somebody that could help and contribute, but somebody that had a big presence in this portal sphere, I guess, if you want to call it that they were able to kind of get through it. It seems like this was one of the first times in a while that Oklahoma was able to get over that hump that has prevented them from being able to land some of these bigger guys here over the last couple of years.
Well, I think the biggest part of it is, guys, we've known for a couple of months that not just Oklahoma, but Texas, LSU, a whole mess of schools. Like the second a defensive tackle with just a pulse went into the portal, everybody was going to be all in. Like we knew that was going to be one of those positions along with offensive tackle where everybody was just going to go nuts. Like anybody that could play was going to end up there. Guys, I mean, no slight to the guy, but look at the guy that George mentioned going to Texas. Does anybody remember him from the bowl game when OU played them? Like, I mean, I remember watching him for one of the breakdowns, but we're not talking about some outstanding player. Like he's a good, solid guy, but this isn't some world beater, and he's going to Texas. Like that tells you what the marketplace was like, and it explains why a lot of these guys did go into the portal. There was so much available to them. And Dominic Williams, for my money, and I watched most of these guys, I thought he was clearly probably along with the Jay Toya guy at UCLA. I thought they were the two that were kind of in front of everybody else. So I like Lole more than most. But to get back, just to the question, Oklahoma knew this was going to be a battleground. Like they knew this was going to be a big deal. And we've watched them at times, it seemed like they kind of dipped their toe, but once things got a little rough and it got to, kind of the moment to, all in or all out, it just seemed like Oklahoma would back away from the table. This one, guys, I mean, I know you've heard it. I've said it on the board, and I know you guys have said similar things. I've not seen Oklahoma seem to be this resolved about any guy. Like this was, we're going to get this done. However it needs to happen. George heard about Brent, really working this guy through Dominic through the course of the day. And there was, it seemed like there was a very singular focus throughout the program. And guys, through all of it, like OU's fans, they needed a win. They needed to see that Oklahoma, when they had to, and when it was a need position and a guy that could help them, they were going to do what it took to go win. And that's what it's like, guys. That's life in the SEC. You're going to have to step out of your comfort zone at times. And I think, to me, that's almost the bigger question here. What does this signify more? And I'd be interested to hear what you guys think, because I've kind of been mulling this over through the day. Is this a bigger sign for Oklahoma changing a perception, or is this a bigger sign of Oklahoma accepting what college football is and kind of changing, acknowledging like we're going to have to change the way we do this, and this is an indicator of, okay, we're going to play ball with everybody else?
I told Eddie before we got on here, I was like, I wonder if this is a moment that we look back on and be like, that was kind of a turning point for them. And I would even go back to the Caden Green stuff and how that went down.
I think that was like the first alarm bell.
Yes. And it was like kind of an eye-opening moment for them, I think, to be like, oh crap, we better get this thing together. And I think that you're seeing that in the spring portal, because they now, guys, have gone 3 for 3 on all 3 of their targets in the spring portal. And they had to pay to get all 3 of them. And they had to
And they're all three
recruit
guys
their
that
butts
are
off.
legitimately. I don't
They're
know.
going to play. I mean,
I don't know if
two are
Lole
definite starters. Yeah,
right.
And Lole's going to play a lot. And so I think that's and Lole could start. I mean, he could start as well. So, but that's where you go. Okay, maybe that Caden Green situation. I'd love to put some truth serum into the staff and be like, was that kind of a moment where you're like, hey, we got to figure this out? Because we've heard things about the NIL, and I think we've all known that they have the money, and I think that there's also been some in the last few months that they've kind of ponied up as well. But I think that you're going to look. There's a chance we look back on this moment and say, man, that was the moment that they kind of got. No, that doesn't mean they're going to go out and land every single guy in the portal. That's just not reality to be able to do that. But and it doesn't also mean they're going to go win a national championship or an SEC championship or
that's
not
not what he told me before we went on, folks.
But I do think that it can be a moment when you look at the progression of this tenure under Brent Venables and the direction that this thing is headed, as well as the direction of college football, that this is another step in the right direction. It's something they can build on.
I know that we've talked a lot about in just terms of bringing the two guys in the interior. I do think we need to hit on a little bit just in terms of what we think the rotation or projection. I don't think that this is a situation because they went out and got two guys on the interior. To me, that doesn't mean that David Stone and Jaden Jackson are destined to redshirt. Now, this was part of a product that and you've talked about on the practice report, they wanted to be able to rotate six guys.
I think that, yeah, they want to be able to play six different guys. And obviously you've got Terry, you've got Lole, you've got Williams now, so that's three right off the top. I think that you're going to see David Stone and Jaden Jackson's had a phenomenal spring. He's definitely going to be in the rotation. I think Grayson Halton is in there, and that might be your six. I think Devon Sears is somebody.
Maybe somebody that can
he's
come
in the
and
mix.
There's going to be injuries. There's going to be things that prevent guys.
Think
from
about all
on
the guys we're listing here. Like
right.
this. They've never been in this type of a situation before where they're able to have that many guys, and it's not. I think that like guys like David Stone and Jaden Jackson, they could play 300 snaps for you next year, but you probably don't want them playing 300 snaps for you next year. So you can kind of divvy it up where these guys aren't having to play all the time. And I think that was an attractive part for Lole and Dominic Williams, is because they know that they have to be able to not play all the time. And where they're coming from, they had to play quite a bit. I think also schematically, they really like what OU might be doing, especially if they do some three-man front and you're playing a straight-up nose tackle sometimes. Those guys kind of fit that mold.
Well, that's beautiful. Another super. What was the name, Carrie? Beatmaker 50 with a super chat gift and donation. You're going to be able to get a little coconut water on the way home, and I might be able to buy a pack of 6. So that's a good deal for me. And he made sure that Josh got nothing. He said that he needs to treat his kids a little bit better before bedtime.
That sounds correct. That absolutely adds up and checks out. My kids, of course, tonight wanted to. Guys, I don't know about you. I sat here for about 3.5 hours with like nothing to do. I'm just kind of hanging around the house. And then the second this all goes live, it's like bedtime for my kids. I'm like, of course it is. That's the way this always goes. I do want to say, guys, we've got almost 1,500 people listening, and we've got 34 likes. Like, let's go ahead and get those numbers up. That's not going to do for right now.
Just in terms of kind of what we were talking about with the rotation stuff, would that line up with what you think, Josh, just in terms of getting these guys in? They're going to be able to be day one contributors. That doesn't necessarily mean that some of the young guys within the program aren't going to see the field in 2024.
I don't think so at all, guys. Like I almost hate to say it. Like, there's a part of me that's like, is Devon Sears a graduate? Like, how does that work out? Like, where does he sit with things right now? Because I do, like, there is plenty of rotation. I don't think there's any question that Oklahoma wants to get David Stone and Jaden Jackson as many reps as they possibly can. They want those guys on the field. They want them out there, just getting more familiar. Because, guys, I mean, no matter what, in all likelihood, Dominic Williams is going to be a one-year guy for Oklahoma, and we know Lole's leaving. We know Terry's leaving. We know, Devon Sears is going. So those guys they're the room next year. It's got to be there along with Grayson Halton. So I don't think there's any doubt they want to season those guys as much as they possibly can. But for me, guys, what this does is we've talked about, like, where could this team go? What's going to stop them? There were two questions. It was like, what's the defensive tackle room look like? I think that question's answered. I think Oklahoma is more than serviceable, can play with whoever they need to, and be very solid at defensive tackle. I don't think that's going to cost them a game, assuming all goes to plan. It's the offensive line. There's one variable left. And, I don't know if you guys, in fact, I know you guys saw it, but, you've got Branson Hickman out there. PFF gave him some love today as one of the top returning offensive linemen as far as their ratings go. So, again, Oklahoma's not been flashy until really tonight, but they've done really nice work in the portal. Like, I think they've been super efficient and really kind of maximize it. And every need they had that was available to be addressed, they've done an outstanding job fixing.
What's the next step? Can something be spawned out of getting a Dominic Williams, and maybe even particularly on the in the defensive tackle recruitment in 2025, 2026 and onward? It seems like if he's able to come into Oklahoma, they show what he's able to develop into under Todd Bates. Is this something that they can start using? They can start manipulating on the recruiting trail and saying, this guy came in, he got more interest, he played in Brent Venables' defense, he played for Todd Bates. What kind of parlay can they make out of just getting one single commitment tonight?
Oh, I think it's huge, guys. I can tell you at least two either recruits or parents have already hit me up and is like, this is huge for OU. This is exactly what they needed. They needed, that kind of momentum. Like, these guys see this stuff. They know. And again, it's not just about, OU got this guy. Who did they beat? And these, the parents, the players, they see the commitment. They see, like, Oklahoma's going to do what it has to do, because they know what this choice came down to. I mean, we're not kidding ourselves about any of this. So I think it does. It does resonate. But as far as going forward and being able to say, you start putting some of these guys in the NFL. We can talk about, DJ Terry. We can talk about, Dominic Williams. Now, you go down that list and you start putting these guys in the league. You don't have to keep showing them Clemson tape. Well, look what Grady Jarrett looked like under us. Look what this guy was. You don't have to do any of that crap. You get to show guys in your own uniform saying, we got this guy to the NFL. And people, fans will be like, well, no, he was at TCU. He was on that trajectory anyways. That's not the way players look at it. They see an Oklahoma product, Roger Goodell or whoever it is up there reading a card that has Oklahoma on it. Like that's what they see. That's what they think about. And, and again, Todd Bates' track record is one of the better ones in the country, which, again, we should be sitting here. Probably we should have given a portion of this whole live read to us reading some of the just crap posts of the Todd Bates stuff, and just having our way with some of the horrible takes that were going around. 6-8 months ago? And now you're like, wow, that room all of a sudden looks really good. The future looks good. Everything's in good shape. But yeah, this is again, I don't want to make too much of this, and this is this guy changes the game and they just landed a first-round draft pick. But he's a draft guy. He's going to be drafted. If he's healthy and everything goes the way it should, he's a one-year guy, and then he's playing in the NFL this time, or headed to the NFL this time next year. So this is how you start these things, and this is how you start to build and start landing more of those elite 5-stars that I know OU fans obviously and understandably want more of.
I also would say, I don't know, Eddie, you're about to jump into something, but I'm watching the chat here, and a bunch of Texas fans I think have flooded the chat.
Welcome.
And
I'm the person that
don't let these Texas fans steal your moment tonight, OU fans. Look, I'm with Josh, where I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this guy is some first round draft pick and is going to be the difference maker in terms of competing for an SEC championship or something next year. I do think that it makes the defense quite a bit better, but this is just a good big moment for Oklahoma football in terms of the perception and being willing to pay. And the bottom line truth is, whether people want to believe it or not, OU essentially outbid Texas tonight for this guy. That's what it came down to. And so whether you think they overpaid or not, like OU got him, and that's a huge win.
Say hello to my buddy.
Do we think that if Texas had won, they'd be like, well, we got him for the right price? No, like you can't turn the tables. Just say we got outbid on this one. Like it's fine. Like, but there's nothing sadder than being in the OU chat trying to justify your recruiting loss.
But we welcome them, and we hope that you're
sure.
having a good time.
You're making us money by being
say
here.
Say
So,
hello
thank
to Jeff Ketchum for me. David Chamberlain just made his first super chat on live stream. Thank you for that. Bill Furster's in here as well as the great Grimblock. I think he is probably well known by some of the Texas people within the chat. They probably have a good company to keep them, I think is probably the best way to say it. Just in terms of a little bit of a reset for people that may be just joining us, Dominic Williams commits to Oklahoma on Thursday evening. I forget what day it is. A massive get for Oklahoma, the 6'2", over 300-pound defensive tackle. 2 years of eligibility left. And, you know, just in terms of, we were talking about Todd Bates and how much this can be parlayed. Oklahoma did offer his little brother as well, just recently during their visit, correct?
Yeah, I forgot to. We should have mentioned this at the top.
You talked to him tonight.
I talked to both of them tonight, Dominic and Josh, on the phone, and obviously Dominic kind of taking me through the process and just the kind of the moment to commit and all of that. But I thought it was interesting talking to his little brother Josh, who's I think more of a defensive end player, 2027, so he's very young. He's got some time. That. It meant a lot to him. He wasn't on the visit to the spring game.
Okay.
But he got to talk some with Todd Bates today and said that it was a very awesome talk and that he, thought it meant a lot to him that he would drive all the way down to see Dominic today and then also talk to him about his future. But they gave him an offer. He said that he's expected to camp at Oklahoma this summer. So that should be interesting. I know Josh is going to be down here for some of that. So maybe we'll get to see him and kind of meet these guys in person. But certainly somebody to keep an eye on, in the 2027 class. I know that's a long ways away for a lot of people out there, and the focus right now for Oklahoma is 2025. But he is certainly somebody OU has their eye on right now.
I would love to ask both of you too, just in terms of we'd always talked about the two interior defensive tackles. I know that there had been some names come up even today, just in terms of maybe Oklahoma was gauging interest, maybe that was a secondary option if they weren't able to land Dom Williams. They done on the defensive line, you guys think?
I would guess so. I honestly don't know how many spots they have left. I think that they obviously looked into some backup options. They even contacted Brandon Lane from Stephen F. Austin, who was originally committed in the portal to Michigan State, decommitted today. They contacted him today and we're maybe setting up a visit. I need to follow up with his agent and see, if that's still something that they would like to do this weekend. If they do, then he would certainly be somebody.
Sure, that would be
something
that would be even more interesting on top of the news today.
I just don't know. Like we talked about the 6-man rotation. I really like that 6-man rotation. I don't know if you need to add another body.
Now, if anybody can play,
can he play left tackle or right tackle?
If anybody can play tackle or guard or something like that, maybe
right.
You have a little bit more interest. There are two guys out there in the offensive line portal, Josh, just in terms of Geno Vandermark from Michigan State, as well as Isaiah Wright from Buffalo. Those are both names that I think that we've just thrown out when we're talking about options at the offensive line for Oklahoma. Has there been any movement on that? And is that something that Oklahoma would still be interested in?
To my knowledge, it's been pretty quiet about that. Again, with Wright, we talked about this on the podcast yesterday. There was kind of a follow the follows, and it seemed like Oklahoma was kind of gauging interest. I talked to a few people that would have that were like, well, I mean, it's not impossible, but it would be pretty surprising because what I kind of gathered on him, and again, I won't claim as much college football as I watched. Didn't see a lot of Buffalo last year. So my read on it was he could be a depth piece for Oklahoma, but that's not what Oklahoma needs. Like they've got bodies. They need somebody who can come in and play and be, a difference maker and that kind of thing. And I don't think that's what you're talking about there. The Vandermark situation, again, it's just a matter of, is Oklahoma willing to shuffle some things, or, do you want to move, Fabechi Wiwu around when okay, this guy's good enough to be Oklahoma's starting right guard, and we're pretty sure Branson Hickman at center. And other than that, I think there's a lot of potential movement, musical chairs that still is in play and is still being messed around with and tinkered with. So again, Vandemark's a good player, and I know Oklahoma likes him. It's just a matter, is he going to help, or does he just further upset the apple cart and they've got to rethink what they want to do?
I think when you look at the guys that have gone into the transfer portal on the offensive line that Oklahoma might be interested in, none of these guys stand out to me as a difference maker. Like, they're not going to go out and get somebody that is just a home run hit like a Lance Hurd would have been, and that's another example of a guy that, a few months ago that was maybe an eye-opening experience where, they weren't able to land him, and it was a situation where I think they got outbid. So, but I think when you look at the offensive line, their best bet is somebody like a Jake Taylor, a Heath Ozida, some of these younger guys, becoming real players, becoming guys that you can rely on and turning into, future draft picks. A Jacob Sexton, you want to see him to continue to develop, because the reality is, there's just not a lot of quality offensive linemen in the portal right now, whereas you saw that on the defensive line. The defensive line was actually a pretty surprisingly good group up front in terms of guys in the portal. You have not seen that in the spring portal. So Oklahoma's, I think, kind of looking at it and say, okay, Michael Tarquin, I think, has maybe surprised some people at left tackle. Jacob Sexton has moved to that left guard spot, and you like him there, but you could also move him to right guard or to right tackle. You get your center in Branson Hickman. You like your right guard in Fabechi Wiwu. And then that right tackle spot's kind of where you tinker with it a little bit. So I'm still skeptical on the offensive line, but I just don't see somebody out there that you bring in that you're like, oh, yeah, he fixes the issues. Like, I think their best bet is hoping that some of these younger guys can fill those spots.
Real quick, I will say Buffalo's not off the hook for losing the first half 24-0 to Eastern Michigan on Tuesday, November 7th. So just wanted to get that out there. They're not off the hook. Okay, we got one more super chat in here. I need to look and see who it was.
I believe someone bought me a Bud Light the last I saw. Thanks to David Chamberlain there. I appreciate you.
Is Bud Light back? Can we drink Bud Light again? What if they were What if they were only drinking Bud Light at Columbia University? Wouldn't that be ironic? David Chamberlain back. Thanks again. Another super chat. That's 2 super chats tonight for him. Maybe he will also invest into Oklahoma's NIL. I will say, they've learned from some of their past failures in terms of not being able to land guys. You threw out Lance Hurd earlier. We've talked about Caden Green. If there's anything we've learned a lot about Brent here over the first 3 years of his regime in Norman, but it does seem like when you look at, some of the mistakes that were made, even on the field, I'm talking about maybe off the field more so during his first year, he's definitely a self-evaluator in a way. And I think that is kind of some of the stuff that he looks at. And then they have been better in other aspects of the game, both on and off the field here, as we enter into what will be Brent's 3rd year.
Well, I think that you see him really adjusting to college football. And I say that like he's becoming more of a CEO head coach where he hires a Zach Alley. He's gone out and done the GM stuff where, Curtis Lofton is super involved. He got Chuck Lilly from Kansas State, who, was hired as an assistant GM, who I was told, played a big part in what happened today. He was a part of those discussions and helping out with that. So I think that you're seeing that progression. And again, that doesn't mean, if Oklahoma goes 8-4 or 9-3 next year, that wouldn't surprise me just because of the schedule and how difficult it's going to be. But again, the way this thing is being built, I think it's being built the right way. You're seeing guys stick around. You're seeing them really fill the 85 roster with 85 guys that they really like. And whether that's bringing guys in or even saying, hey, to some of these guys that have left, there's not a spot for you. I think that that's the reality of college football, and you're seeing Brent kind of adjust to that.
Grimlock back in the super chat. We appreciate it. If you spend all your money here, you're not going to have any money to lose out at Shady Oaks here over the weekend.
Also, just don't call Carrie tonight. No call on Carrie.
I don't know. I think everything is.
I'm gonna go ahead and disagree with you there, George.
I think everything is on the table on a night like tonight for Oklahoma fans. But certainly, monumental. I don't know if that's being dramatic about it, but it is a massive, massive day for Oklahoma, picking up the commitment of Dominic Williams. And like you said, the portal for the spring, we were wondering, even at the beginning of spring ball, it was going to be kind of one of those things like a wait and see. Well, what's going to be out there. They've done pretty damn well here over the last couple weeks.
3 for 3. I mean, those were their 3 guys. They brought them in for spring game weekend, and they got all 3.
And it seems like Bauer Sharp's going to have a big role. Des Malone's going to have a big role.
Oh, you're talking about the
I'm
winter
portal.
Well,
yeah, but I was talking about spring. You're right.
Yeah.
But when you add in the guys that were already here
Burks,
for spring ball, it's very apparent that, and Brent's talked about it before, just in terms of identifying guys, checking off all the boxes that you need to. They're going to need to be guys that if you bring them in through the transfer portal, they have to be somebody that's going to contribute.
There's a balance in the way that you build your program. I think you don't want to be Colorado, where you're just flipping your roster every year, but you also don't want to be Clemson, where you're just saying we're not taking anybody in the portal. I think that you have to have the right mix of guys, and I think Oklahoma's done a nice job of identifying, hey, we need a guy at this spot, or we really like. I think Deion Burks, Oklahoma didn't need to go out and get a receiver. You really like that receiver room, but they said, hey man, if we can get a guy like that, that's a huge difference maker. And I think that that's where they've done a really good job. Is not only they're filling needs, they're saying they're evaluating talent, I think, at a high level and saying, hey, this guy could really help us even at a position that we really like already. So I think that they've approached it the right way. Have they had some misses? Yeah. I mean, again, we mentioned it, Caden Green, Lance Hurd, all of those. But I do think that they've also done a really good job of just seeing exactly what they needed and going out and getting it.
Well, and the good thing for Oklahoma fans, unlike the head coach at Colorado, I don't think the head coach at Oklahoma is an asshole. Josh, final thoughts just in terms of today. Another super chat? Unbelievable.
Shoelace Sooner.
Very good.
Nice.
This, guys, I will say the final thought, and it kind of ties into what we're talking about with the Caden Green situation. We mentioned Caden Green's, Lance Hurd, but they've had all the success on the defensive line. Guys, and again, me, recruiting brain, like I'm going to think of it in these terms, but I think what you're seeing is Oklahoma saying, okay, there's going to be times we can go find what we need on the defensive line in the portal. I think there is also a pretty clear indication by what I'm seeing happening in offensive line recruiting, where they're saying, no, we've got to build that through high school. That's got like more than anything else. And not to say that defensive line is different. You look at the best programs, they're built through high school recruiting. They just are. But you can supplement a little bit better along the defensive line, I think, than you can along the offensive line, especially at tackle, the premier position. So I again, like when I look at Oklahoma really heavily involved with 4 big-time offensive tackles, and obviously already have one committed in Ryan Foje, and they're chasing a couple of big-time guards, the local kid from Elgin, big-time guy from Utah. So I think that is kind of an interesting way for maybe OU fans to gauge this a little bit and say, okay, why are they doing it this way? But the bottom line for Dominic Williams is this is a big get, and I'm getting people already like, is he a first-round pick? I'm not saying that. I'm saying he is a very good player. I think he walks in and is Oklahoma's best defensive tackle from word go. And if you're doing that and you already had a pretty good room, that's how you get to where you need to be. That's how you can cycle bodies through the way they want to. And last year where they were kind of cycling in, let's be honest, a lot of undrafted free agent type of guys. Now you're starting to put more and more like these are NFL bodies out there. And that's how you push, like we talked about earlier, to that next level where these, young players, these high school prospects I'm talking about, start noticing guys getting drafted.
Make sure you head to SoonerScoop.com. Josh, as we talked about, went over the tape today, did a breakdown of Dominic Williams and what he will be bringing to Oklahoma. George, you've been all over the story from the get-go.
I'm going to take vacation.
A little bit of a background. Vacation. Yeah. Another vacation.
No, I'm just kidding. There's still a lot going on. So
no, there is.
And I like I said, I talked to Dominic tonight, talked to his brother. I'll have some quotes up from those guys. Hoping to maybe talk to some more folks over the next couple of days, just kind of his story.
Another player, too, that mentioned Jerry Schmidt as somebody that really impressed him.
Yeah. He was talking about, he was going on and on about Bates and Venables. And was like, oh yeah, and Jerry Schmidt's somebody that I really want to work with. Can't wait to get in the weight room. And he said that he'll be up here. I think May 13th is when he'll be on campus. So Dominic Williams is coming, and he's definitely looking forward to it.
Very good. Make sure that again, really good YouTube exclusive. $1 for 2 months to Soonerscoop.com. Promo code OU1. Special offer here for the YouTube viewer out there. It seems like a really good deal just in terms of, I mean, we've been reporting on this story now for what, 2 weeks?
2 weeks,
since the Oklahoma spring game. There's a lot more to, definitely get into in terms of what this means for Oklahoma, where they're going to go from here. Are there going to be more transfer portal additions here over the coming weeks? Bob Przybyla will be out at softball this weekend for the OU-OSU series, the Bedlam series, coming to Love's Field. Final regular season series of the year, which is kind of crazy. Oklahoma won't be playing another road game this year as they roll into the Big 12 tournament next week, and then obviously the NCAA tournament. So I know that you Texas fans will be out there watching. Texas is really damn good as well, having won the series this season. So I think that's it. Very good. A Texas fan has given money to us in the Super Chat, and I think that will be used, as most of this money will be used, to the funeral home that we buried somebody in a long time ago that used to work for to cover Texas. Josh, were you going to say something?
No, I was literally about to give a shout out. And Eddie, he thinks kindly of you. He had a boomer for peace. That's a first. That's a new one. But definitely, as ever, Eddie, increasing the relations between OU and Texas. It's a beautiful thing you're doing.
Sandman 23, I think that will be remembered in Sooner lore for forever. And we'll give you, Grimlock, get his number. Call him instead of Carey. I think that'd be the best way to go. But, gentlemen, good job on reporting of the story today. Obviously, a very, very big get for Oklahoma. We'll probably talk about it on the recruiting report come Monday as we roll into the spring. And spring football starting here in the state of Oklahoma. I know it's already going down in the state of Texas with a bunch of teams or a bunch of guys already out there Josh, you're going to be getting out to see. We'll be getting out to see some people up here in the Sooner State before you make the trip up I-35 for the Sooner Scoop spring tour through all of the Oklahoma high schools. So for George, Josh, I'm Eddie. Thanks for joining us this evening. A very big day for the University of Oklahoma football program with the commitment of Dominic Williams from TCU through the transfer portal. We will see you next time.